This week on Talking Heads, we're looking for love with Yvonne Allen. You could probably call Yvonne Australia's premier matchmaker. Since 1976, she's been trying to put Mr. and Mrs. Right together. Well, for herself, it's taken until just recently for Yvonne to find Mr. Right. Yvonne, welcome to Talking Heads.
It's great to be here.
You formed Yvonne Allen and Associates back in 1976, and it was really pioneering. What were you offering that was different?
Well, first of all, it was considered a very nefarious area for me to be going into when I had a good degree in psychology and so on. I started it because I'd worked for 10 days for a charlatan who called himself, marriage consultant. And
this was a field that was seemingly full of charlatans.
Well, yes, and yet what was so crazy was here were these yous and I's walking through the door saying, I really am having trouble finding the person I'd like to share my life with, which is a big, tall order, especially today. And I wrote a paper which the Royal Commission into Human Relationship took as a submission saying there was a need for a real professional service in the area, and I couldn't get anybody else to start it. So I said, well, I will. And of course my family and friends were horrified.
What was different about what you were offering?
Right from the start, I wanted to provide a way for people to meet themselves in many ways, to have a far clearer understanding of what their needs were in terms of looking for someone to share their life. I gave my first client 9 hours worth of profiling because I said, if you don't join, I won't be able to open next week. And all you can do is meet me, but you'll meet yourself. And even today, an underpinning in our way of working is that.
As people sort of settled into thinking about this, what did they discover that was different between what they thought they wanted and what you might have discovered they really wanted?
It varies with the individual, but quite a lot of people realise that they've been barking up the wrong tree, keep going for what their want list is when they're not meeting their core needs. For example, this gentleman came in and he was lovely. He'd been married for 20 or 25 years and he was a successful businessman and he wanted to meet a much younger woman. This was in my first year. And I had Maria, who was a successful woman in her early 30s, and she was quite happy to meet an older man. And he thought it was bliss. Then I started to get the phone calls, but she wants to go out often. She can't remember when, and so on and so forth. He ended up marrying somebody who was just a slight update in terms of the wish list to his wife.
Has what people want changed in the 30-plus years you've run this business?
I really have a lot of concern today. There are so many women who would love to be in a relationship, who have not been out with a man for years, who are not giving off any cues of their femininity, their interest, the fact that they're even available. We've always catered for the business professional sector of society. Well, the businesswoman in 1976 was almost a different species. I always had big pictures, and I was always told, Yvonne, you were just a dreamer. But I think I've always thought ahead of my times and believe that really everything's possible if only we have the will to make it so. I was the firstborn, the eldest of 5. Mum was a pharmacist. Dad had his own second-hand car dealership from home. From my position now, working as a matchmaker, I'd say, they were an ill match in many ways because Dad wasn't particularly educated and Mum was. Dad had numbers of quirks and one of them was he was something of a gambler. Dad, therefore, really spent mostly what he earned. Mum was the breadwinner of our family. So from childhood, I had a model of a woman being able to support a family. My parents were both Catholic and regular churchgoers. We were all educated in Catholic schools. Through writing, I had a dear friend, Kathy Murray, And her father, Keith Murray, was extremely significant in my development. I remember in my early teen years sitting in his study into the wee hours, and he was the one that really said to me, "Yvonne, we all bleed the same." I learned so much from him and was supported in my independent thinking by him.
That comment, "we all bleed the same," why was that significant?
In particularly my family home, where my father had very racist views, it was extremely helpful because it was something I had strong convictions about.
I guess what that story illustrates is that there was a clash, a fundamental clash around values in your own household.
And values are very important, expectations of what a life is.
Well, what do you take from the fact that your parents were obviously mismatched, but they stuck together?
Well, that's true, and Mum made a commitment. You made your bed and you lay on it, and she was a very strong practising Catholic, and she also loved Dad.
Given your place in the world, where you're matching people, what do you think of people that walk away?
Often people go into marriages they should never have gone into in the first place, which is why I think we've got to put far more emphasis. We're not prepared at school or anywhere to go into the biggest decision we can make in a single life, who we're going to share it with. I mean, in Yvonne Allen, we don't even normally show photos. People read 9 pages about each other, the beneath the skin stuff. So then if the chemistry's there, there's something underneath.
I imagine, in that era, that all your fellow girl students talked about the prospects of marriage and marrying someone successful.
It was expected you would go to university to meet someone, I think.
What did you say?
Well, I can say when people said to me later, "How come you're so courageous and do all these things?" I said, "How did you go into agreement with the red brick cottage and the picket fence and the 2.5 children and so on?" To me, that seemed a very scary statement at that early age.
What were you searching for?
I think that life is such a journey, such a wonderful journey, but you know, we need to be prepared to take the risk. When I went to, as an Australian volunteer abroad to New Guinea, they said to me, "You know, what are your reasons?" And I said, "Selfish. I want to learn and I want to give as I learn." But I also wanted to really check out whether indeed I wasn't racist. I decided to go to New Guinea as an Australian volunteer abroad. The year was one of the most rewarding in my life. I was placed at Marianville College out of Moresby, and there were 7 nuns, 200 girls, myself, a non-practising Catholic, and a Methodist. I was only going to be earning $10 a week, and it was so rewarding to be with students who so wanted to learn. I was offered a position at the University of Papua New Guinea. So I was actually asked if I'd like to be a tutor in the history of science and technology for preliminary students going to university, and also a part-time counsellor. When I was leaving the University of New Guinea to go to England with someone I'd met at the university, a lecturer there who was 16 years older than I learned a lot from him. I also experienced a lot of the downsides. We were together for a couple of years and we parted company. I mean, I understand the pain of relationships, the love and other bruises that we need to be prepared to experience in a relationship. I came back to Australia and was accepted as a district officer in the Department of Child and Social Welfare. It was really quite an eye-opening experience for me. I was offered a position in Broken Hill. My area out there was very large. I had many families that I worked with that were Aboriginal. There were many ways that we could enhance what we did, but I was a bit of a voice crying in the wilderness, I'm afraid. I knew that I would not thrive within the confines of a bureaucratic environment.
You and the bureaucracy didn't mix very well.
No, because I kept questioning. I remember a situation where there was a closed conference. We'd get these letters back from the Aboriginal communities. We'd send them letters, and we didn't get letters back. And I would say, but that's not their way of communicating. Why wouldn't we go out with porta packs, videos, talk to the people, get them to speak? Or, you know, there was no further conversation.
The relationship you formed in Papua New Guinea with a man 16 years older, was that the first big relationship in your life?
The first really serious one, well, that's not quite true. I had a lovely beau when I was at school and going into university, but it was really scary and totally the end of things for me when I was at a gathering at his place and they said, isn't it wonderful having just family present? And, you know, and later on I realised, you know, he said to me, you know, I would have married Yvonne, but I was 18, you know, no.
Well, later on you were in love enough to go to Britain and live there with your partner. Mm-hmm. And you talk about love and other bruises, learning from love and other bruises. What do you mean?
Well, I think part of being vulnerable and open to loving means that you are exposing yourself to pain. And a lot of people don't end up having intimate relationships because they fear the very thing that is required in a loving relationship, to be vulnerable. I think whilst my relationship was fantastic in so many ways, I learned so much from a man so much older. He came into it with having his partner having just recently left him for his best friend, and I unwittingly, when he asked me to something, thought I was going to a function at the university rather than as his partner. But he brought his baggage quite understandably.
We all do, don't we?
Yeah, but she'd only left him the week before.
Oh. Or maybe give it 2 weeks.
And so what I'm saying, as a young girl, I really wasn't equipped. And I also wasn't prepared to just fit. It's crazy in many ways that as the creative spirit that I am and that I've stayed with something for 32 years. When I started Yvonne Allen, it was to prove something could be done that was different in its aims to the Lonely Hearts Club Bureau-style operations. I wanted to really look at facilitating the opportunity for people to become far clearer about what they were really looking for. There was resistance and embarrassment around me, and the bank manager looked at me and said, I can't see you making a go of it, but you can have 2,000.
I was told it was the red light district, but I said, well, this is where we are. If people walk through the door thinking it's a brothel, they'll walk out knowing we're not.
Good morning, Yvonne Allen and Associates. Can I help you?
And at the time there was a paper I really enjoyed called The Nation Review, so I advertised there. Very soon I got inquiries, say, from Adelaide saying, would like to be able to use your services, can you help me? And I'd say, yes. And so on a plane I'd go. At one stage we had 5 mirror offices in 5 cities. I had thought that after 4 years I would have proven that this area of work could be managed in a caring, a professional way. I had a vision of working for the United Nations. I went to Greece, to actually reflect on, do I stay with Yvonne Allen or now do I move on?
Now, you ran yourself ragged.
Yes.
Well, as we've just seen. Someone wants some help in Adelaide and you set up an office in Adelaide.
Oh, dearie me. I mean, crazy.
How did you survive in business?
Oh, with great difficulty. And that was compounded by the fact that I had people when I started who said to me, what right do you have to charge lonely people? I could say, what right do you have to charge hungry people? So when people were saying how...
The point there, I guess, was that they thought that was exploitation. And there's certainly been charlatans that have done precisely that, haven't there?
Yes, but there are also people who serve lousy food. You pay a lot lot for it. I mean, anyone who had a reading of me would certainly not have thought I was going in as a charlatan. But I actually, when people would say how successful I am, I'd think, so-and-so's meeting so-and-so, and we're successful, you know. I mean, and I probably, because of that, stayed way beyond anybody else would have been prepared to, had gone in.
I'm intrigued by the psychology, though, too, aside from the cost of running the business. By paying a reasonable sum...
They're making a statement.
It's kind of an investment, isn't it?
What do people invest in hiring somebody for their company? But, you know, a lot of men do not want to pay. Successful men do not want to pay, and I think there's an ego issue.
They think they should be on the side or part of the process for freedom.
Totally.
They're an asset.
Totally. Especially in this era when we're saying, where are the men? But the reality is, to establish a good relationship, a good personal life, when they paid... I had somebody recently who's bragged about the fact that they ski in Aspen for 3 weeks and travel first class and whatever, and said our fees were too high. And I thought, well, I don't think you value a relationship.
Do you find high flyers want other high flyers?
Look, a female high flyer, biologically, is conditioned to be wanting to look up. The guy who's very successful does not want to have to make an appointment to see his partner. And indeed, a lot...
I thought that might have applied both ways, actually.
well, the woman has tended... I mean, the old model worked for men.
The old model of a woman actually taking...
Being there, looking more...
The nurturing role.
Yes. And men are wired for that. We've, in 30 years, totally tried to undo wiring that goes back gazillion thousands. You know, I mean, we really have got to stop and take stock because we have got a very serious issue happening. I am a pretty strong independent woman and I've never gone into agreement with the concept of barefoot in the kitchen or whatever. And I'm first and foremost a person. But the reality is I see so many women who would love to have had a child, love to have a partner, having missed out. And they're saying, and why?
Now, personally, you were to have a daughter, but we'll come to that. Your biological clock's ticking too. And did you yearn for children?
No.
Did you yearn for a partnership?
No, I didn't either. I wrote a book called Successfully Single, Successfully Yourself, because so many people were coming through my door saying their life would only happen when they met someone. And I said, unless you can create a life that is rich and has meaning and is interesting, how are you going to attract the sort of person you'd like to have in your life into it anyway? Did
you feel a bit envious of those that were successfully matching up?
No. Oh, can I say, I'd be sitting there, because living on the premises, and there's the weekend, and I'm thinking, oh, so-and-so's meeting so-and-so and so-and-so, and here's me sitting
What am I doing?
So I'd wander,
reading through the paper.
I'd wander down the road to a lovely restaurant where I was welcome and I could sit and talk to people, and I certainly addressed the issue. I didn't just sit at home alone. There's a block between the daring to dream and the daring to do. And at times, it's been really important for me to push my boundaries. Like when I jumped out of a plane in my late 30s. I was, before letting go of that airplane, absolutely petrified. But when I did, it was just such a wonderful journey. When you're travelling, you're not stuck in fear. I went to a peace conference and it was on an ashram. I stayed on and meditated on significant change in my life and came back as pure as I don't know what. So when I actually spent a little time with someone who'd been a friend and an occasional partner in my life and conceived Tara, I think it was actually very meant. She was born just a few months before I turned 43. Tara, come on, Tara, come on. I actually had a stake in this future that I'd been talking about, a real motive to continue with my concerns. Oh, he's
I'll get up, darling.
Well, if I start with like psychology, then I can drop to behavioural studies if I need to.
Yeah, I think it makes a great deal of sense. Tara's just left school and she's preparing to go to university this year. I can't help but be concerned for the current generation and my Tara in terms of relationships.
How remarkable to see that growing up film of Tara and you.
Yes, it's astounding, you know. It's a wonderful thing. I am just so delighted that I conceived Tara.
Tara wasn't planned, I presume.
No, she wasn't planned, and though she thinks she was, she said to me when she was about 4, "Mum, I was waiting for so long. How come it took you so long to have me?"
Very insightful at 4.
Yes, she was incredible. There's out of the mouths of babes.
What success rate do you have matching people?
Because I see us as a consultancy and I see our work as a journey, for me, success should be 100% because in the sense of people becoming far clearer about what they're really on about, so that whether through us or out there, they make a decision that really is for them. It is a tall ask to think you're going to meet the one in a 6 months or a 12-month program.
Well, do some people enter your program and actually come to the conclusion, actually, I'm fine single?
And that can be success. Certainly in the earlier years, when it was considered wrong to be single, there's something wrong with you if you don't have a partner and you're over 30, I'd have some people say to me, "But, you know, I realise I like being single." I said, "That's fantastic. Who says you have to be partnered, for goodness sake?" How many people married and had children because they were expected to, whether they were homosexuals or whether they didn't really want children? It's crazy stuff. You know, it's about knowing oneself and trying to create a life that really meets one's needs and those of other people around one.
Well, those people that do get together, those many people that get together, do you follow up?
Well, we have had people come back after the death of a partner or a divorce. We've had children of people who've partnered to us contact us, you know, because over 33 years now, it's a long history.
Generations of them.
But, you know, if people...
Yes, I got your mother and father together.
But I see so much value. I'm really on about friendship more than I am on about romance. If people can open new networks, I would love people to appreciate smelling roses in the journey rather than thinking that's just an end point.
One of your success stories has been Stephen.
Yes. And that's a rather lovely story, actually, because I created a platform to connect people to share interests and activities locally and as they travel. Without it, I wouldn't have met Stephen.
Welcome to a wonderful new world.
Something that has occupied me for many of the last years is a web platform to link people locally and globally.
A world where you can connect to people with your interests, activities, passions and pastimes.
It is up and running and it has people from over 150 countries on it.
To sport or the movies.
The good news about my unodua.com is that I met my partner Stephen through it. And you had a good ride?
Yes, we got in a nice quick 60 k's before work.
We met as friends and out of that a wonderful relationship and partnership has eventuated. So I call him my $2 million man. Stephen and I joined a network of entrepreneurs through the world who want to create wealth to give back to the world. With the kiln, where would we be looking at?
Well, basically what we're thinking about is actually having a trial kiln down in this area down here.
Mm-hmm. Because we donated some money to the Hunger Project. Last year we had the privilege to be in India and to see women of the untouchable class being empowered to have a voice. It was a fantastic experience. We both have several interests in common, and one thing we love to do is to dance. And he's prepared to accept my rather crazy, uninhibited expression of self through dance. I love him for it.
Dancing's always been a big part of you.
Yes, I love to dance. I was once told I danced like a frustrated penguin when I was a kid. I said, I don't care. And I think, again, in our Anglo-Saxon uptightness, when I was in New Guinea, when I've travelled into many societies, dance is just as natural as breathing. And for me, I mean, if I could dance every day and maybe ski a few mountains, I think I'd be a much more sane individual than I am.
Yvonne, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on Talking Heads.
Pleasure. Thank you, Peter.
Next week on Talking Heads, the real underbelly. Journalist Adam Shand was threatened one day, invited to a sleepover the next, during his obsessive journey into Melbourne's gangland war. Monday at 6:30, before the news.
Wednesday on The Cook and the Chef, Maggie and Simon are on rations.
Meat.
Yeah.
Flour.
Bit of rum.
Wild colonial food. That's The Cook and the Chef, Wednesday, 6:30.